Fiction Podcast and Authors Group. Welcome here this afternoon or this morning or afternoon, wherever you are, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching this on a rebroadcast. Today, I wanted to introduce you guys to Ellen. And so I wanted to introduce you to her and her book club, ESP Chats, and give us a little bit more about you, Ellen.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate you valuing me as well. Our group, our reading group, ESP Book Chats, we are a reading group that reach out to authors. I like to say we like to scout out and for talent. We really love scouting out new authors because we believe that you should have a family of people walking with you, especially if you have your new books. So that's basically what we do. We scout out, we look at talent, and we give them a platform to talk about their books.
Okay, wonderful. And so give us some of the authors that you have had interviews with that people, because that's important, especially for the authors in this group. Give us a flavor of who you've had chats with.
Okay, so we used to do this on the outside. So I had, when we did them at hotels, I had opened up my debut with New York Times bestseller Omar Tyree. We had Rashonda Tate Billingsley, and we also had Victoria Christopher Murray. And we had, I'm gonna reach back one more time, we had Trisha Thomas. She did the Napoli Ever After series. In fact, she celebrated her 10th year book anniversary with us here in Newport News, Virginia.
Yeah. Wait, Napoli Ever After, wasn't that turned into a movie? Isn't that on Netflix or something? Isn't that on? Yeah, I was gonna say, so her work was turned into a movie on Netflix. And I think Kim Roby also had one of her books turned to film. It was like The $1 Million Divorce, I think it was.
I'm not sure on that. I know she was working on some things, but I can tell you that Rashonda Tate Billingsley, she was on BET, Let the Church Say Amen.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Cool. So Ellen, we were talking earlier, and of course, this group is, filled with audiobook, narrators and authors and fiction podcasters. But ultimately, the work that we do as narrators and writers is ultimately to get to people like you and the people that you have in your book club and those sorts of things, because you're the end user, you're the final customer that we all want. And so that power listener, that power reader, that person that just loves books and that sort of thing. So why don't we start off by telling us one of your favorite books? Let's start.
OMG. You're gonna get me in trouble.
I don't want to get you in trouble, but
I'm just gonna go with what we've read currently.
Okay.
Just to stay on the safe zone. What we read currently, it was two books. The first book that we read, and it is with Vanessa Lilly, and she has a book, in fact, two books, but the one that we read, and now it just hit a blank at my head. I cannot believe The Best Of. And I'm going to make sure I get those right, but it was two books. Her book was talking about basically what the book was talking about, and I'll look up that as we're talking. Her book was talking about a wounded, very, very painful person who had a miscarriage. She suffered from postpartum depression in the worst kind of way. And so reading this, I thought that, and I read white authors as well as Black authors, but I thought she was a Black author. I really did. And I told her that. And simply because what she wrote about, it crossed everybody. There was no color attached to this to say this only happened to that group. And the stuff that she showed how the character was suffering through this pregnancy, this miscarriage. I wondered why her husband just allowed her to have this pregnancy and dangerous place. Like she was, what she was doing was trying to find who killed her best friend. And I'm like, you're pregnant. You have this baby strapped to you. Why are you going out in those dangerous fields with your baby? So I don't want to give the story away, but at the end of the story, you'll find out this mental illness and these things and how her husband was really there for her. And you'll see in that story. So I really enjoyed that story with Vanessa Lilly. And also our latest one we did with Daniel Black, and he did Perfect Peace. And that was with Emma Jean, she had 7 sons, and she wanted a baby girl. So she took Perfect, the 7th child, and just groomed him as a girl. And he found out later in the story that he was not a girl. So that was the 2 stories that he had with Daniel Black and Vanessa Lilly. So I really love those 2 stories, and you're going to make me go on and on, but those.
I won't make you go on and on. So let me. How do you guys select books? How do you guys select authors? Is
That's
there a
good.
process, or how do you reach out to authors?
That is a great question, Earl. We look at the synopsis. It might sound kind of strange to do that. We don't look at the book cover. We don't look for whether they're white or Black. We just simply look for the synopsis. In looking for that synopsis, you get to see what genre that person is reaching out for, which is very important, because it's not that people aren't reading your book. It's just that you need to launch your book out to that specific group in that specific genre. So we look for that and we read the book, the synopsis, and we say, hey, this is a perfect fit for the genre we're in. And then we read the book, contact the author, hey, your book was chosen, and then we work out some few things. Some of our books it's the book of the month, and some of them are our spotlight authors. So that's a different, the spotlight, there is a fee for that. But the book of the month, that's different because we chose the book and we reached out to the author. So in doing so, we want to effectively get this author's book in the right genre with the right people. And so the genre we're in romance, some thriller, and some things like that. And I think it's very important to know who your audience is. Yeah.
Now, I also know that you try to, help authors understand about, marketing of their work. Having power readers like you and your group to, read the book and select the book and put it out on your platforms. But there's more than one way to reach an audience through a book. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, at one point it was only a printed book, but then of course that evolved into ebooks, yes, where you download it on a Kindle, and then that was the really hot trending thing for now. But also now what's coming up are audiobooks. That's a new thing. And I know that you said you've had authors who have asked you before about producing their work into audiobooks. Is that true? Did I hear you?
Yes. They would ask me about that. And so this is one of the things where I met you. And so not in person for those who think in person, yeah, but I often hear people say, I don't want to read the book. I just want the audio. So then I came across you. I can't remember the book, but it was talking about a father and his family, his sons, and we're both from Chicago. That's what I looked at first. And then I heard your voice. I didn't read a book from you as of yet. And so that particular story, I can't remember the story, but it was so good. The audio, I heard it. And then I was like, why isn't anyone listening to him, meaning Earl Sewell? Because it kept me on edge. It kept me listening. And me personally, I cannot just listen to a person that's doing audio and they're dragging and I can't even hear the character voices. I can't even get to the story because I can't get past the voice. So
Right.
you was definitely different from all of those. So I'm like, well, I need to know you. So it took me like 2 years to get to you. And the first time we got with you, we did your book. Um, Help Me Out.
Was
So
it Lenny Gray? Was it Lenny Gray
we
or
did Lenny Gray, and we also did your YA book,
oh Keisha's Drama?
Keisha's Drama.
Yeah, Keisha's
So we
Drama.
did 2 of your books. So I hear a lot of folks saying that they want the book done, and then sometimes they want to do it themselves, and they did, that voice is just not right, the characters. And so here I am with you, and I thought that what you do was very important to the authors, especially wanting to go to audio, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and then also one of the things that the industry is, especially now, because of the state that this particular country is in, there is a call from publishers for more diversity in the offerings.
Mhm.
Not only in printed books but also in audio content as well. And so the interesting thing, and we were having this conversation a little earlier, is the interesting thing is, um, as creatives, as entrepreneurs, both authors and narrators and those sorts of things, we don't necessarily have to go through the publishers the way we had to in the past, because they were the gatekeepers of distribution of your work. Now it's now set up that technology has caught up, where if you're an entrepreneur or narratorpreneur or any kind of person who wants to start a business, you can do it for minimal startup. And it's about making connections with other people in the industry that have the same goal. So that's why I wanted to bring you on into this group, because looking at the work that you do with helping authors to get out there, and then also you're just one of these people that are a gold mine for both narrators and authors, because again, you and your group and your book club members are the end users. You're the ones that are actually going and doing the downloads. You're the ones that are actually going and doing the buying of the books. And so, what you bring is this, is the resources part. And and I know everybody has limited resources, because books and audio books are basically a luxury item. Because you don't have to buy it. It's you buy it because it's something that you want. So let me ask you, this may sound like a weird question or may not. You know, what what turns you on about books or a good story? Like, what they're because I've run across people to say, "Oh, I don't read." I'm like, "Oh my God, don't ever say that in public. Don't ever say that. Like, oh my
Yes.
God, it's like saying, I don't want to know anything else. I know everything I need to know." And so, so getting avid readers, getting those power readers, finding that tribe of readers, like, what is it about the reading experience that just gets you?
That is a great question. That was one of the things that I was thinking about. I had to be first myself a power reader. So with me wanting my son, he's 23 now, I wanted him to read. I seriously just wanted him to really read. I would casually pick it up. But then what really got me was having the book club, finding the right book, because I didn't know what genre I was in. And Kimberly Lawson Roby, again, her books, the Curtis series, I read.
The Preacher Man.
The Preacher Man, I read, let's just start off with the first 3. Our group read the first 3 books in less than 3 months.
Okay.
And then we went on and we got up to the 14th chapter. So it's 15 in the series. So based on her giving me that passion to read, and I hope I'm answering your question.
Yes.
That's where the drive came from. I wanted to give back to authors, and I wanted to give back in a way that I thought I could. And that is to have a platform for them to talk about their books. And that is my passion. So like you say, when someone said, as a diehard reader, and someone says, I'm like, my husband had to push me away from people. I'm like, I see a book and I run right to them and I'm like, oh, yes, you're reading. And one of the things, this might not make sense to others, But one of the things, especially being a person of color, I was taught, I don't know who from, but stand tall in your seat, have your book, because we were not allowed to read. And so with that, I was like, here I am, a person of color, and we're reading. And what we say in our community is that if you ever want a person to not know anything, hide it in a book because they won't read. And I'm like, I'm not one of those. I do read. And then I start asking people, you know, do you read books? I don't read nothing, but I have my school books and I don't want to read again. And you don't read pleasure books? Oh, I just read the Bible. And I'm like, I read the Bible, but I read pleasure books as well. So just to say, with me being a Christian at first, when I seen people read books, I didn't want to read them because it could be me in my circle, Earl, was that being a Christian and reading a book, for some reason, somebody thought that when you read a book, it's going to be sexual or it's going to be something that takes you away from God. And so in reading those books, I'm like, no, this does not take me away from God. I can still read these books. They're what we call pleasure books or things like that. And there's things that I really like to read. So in reading those stories, a long story short, I like to read those books that make you hear what you're hearing, feel what you're feeling, taste the food, you could smell the cologne and whatever they put to the stage for you to open up your eyes to this reader. And I want to say to you authors, and you see I can talk, to you authors with your books, our book club, we're not just saying, here's your book. It is very important, reader and author. I'm like, okay, reader and author go together because who's reading the books? And so it's very important to have your, to know what genre, who your audience is. And when we read your book, we read the characters, we get to know them, we don't like them, some of them we do, we love to hate. And that's the way we read. We get so in touch with your characters, almost like it's so much drama to where I'm talking to my husband about the book and he's like, where that person live? I say, I'm only talking about a book. He said, well, then why do you make it so real? Because it's so real to us. And that's what I want you guys to know, that your books are very important. Your first baby, if it's your first baby, because we love new authors. And I don't care if you just wrote your book today. And that's the hardest thing, is to people think, oh, I wrote a book, so now they're going to read it. No, just because you wrote a book don't mean we're going to read it. You're asking for us to sit down, take so much amount of time to read these books, and then you want us to love it. Give us something to love. There were some books that I read that I couldn't get past the 4th chapter. I just couldn't. And so some of the book clubs say, Ellen, how far? I'm just on the 4th chapter. I can't. I can't. It doesn't mean that it wasn't good for somebody else, but I just couldn't.
Yeah. So reading is a very intimate thing. You know, reading a book, listening to a book, whatever, it's very intimate. And what you're doing is you're asking a reader for a personal conversation, for a private conversation. You're asking people to give you mental space in their head when you read a book. And so you, as a creative, whether you're narrating a book or whether you're writing the book, you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware that you're asking to take up someone's mental space. And that's a sacred space to take up. Now, I want to also, that thought is finished. I want to back up and just, piggyback on some of the nuggets that you gave out there and put it into context here, because I know people in the group are from all over the world. So for those of you who are not a person of color or a person of African American, you may be of European descent, you may be from India, Japan, or some other part of the world. Here's a little bit of context for you. So of course, everybody knows, chattel slavery happened in the United States of America. That's how America got started. And as one of the issues that we had to go through as people of color in this country who had to go through that was that there was all sorts of lies and belief systems that were created about the intellect of people of color that lasted 400 years, that, they were intellectually underdeveloped, they could not read, they could not comprehend, but yet and still we're building a country for you. But anyway, So that carried over into the consciousness of America, especially the dominant culture, who believed the people who had the powers to, publish books and do things like, they actually believe the lies that, people of color don't read, don't waste your time, blah, blah, blah. So why even produce any content that is centered toward them? Because one, they're not the dominant culture. Two, they don't have the resources to, to support what we're doing. So we'll just forget about them until the Harlem Renaissance came around. And then they were like, oh my God, even though Phyllis Wheatley and other people had come long before that, they were the anomalies, those people only happen once in a lifetime. But anyway, so the backlash of this is that the dominant culture, or people from European descent, were trained unconsciously to believe that people of color did not read, did not write. And if they did read or write, what they were reading, what they were writing was not for me. So they were trained to not look at diverse books and only look at literature that reflected their experience. And only the, what they would call liberals, I guess, who, took that journey to the other side to look, said, oh, wow, this is something that's, different, for me, that I didn't realize. This is a different sort of American experience that, I've never heard of, or that I was sheltered from, blah, blah, blah. And it not only did it happen in literature, it happened in film, it happened in the music, because there were things, back in the 40s, 50s called race records, where, you could have a artist of color, who would be playing the music, but you couldn't have his face or her face on an album cover because they thought it would be offensive to the dominant culture. So anyway, so with that being said, we are now at a space where, to a certain degree, we do not necessarily need the publisher, to go to them to ask. We no longer have to ask. We can just do it. And because of the internet, get the same distribution channels or even wider distribution channels. So that's why one of the reasons I created this group was so that people from all over the world could come in and join it, whether you're from India, Japan, Pakistan, wherever, the United States, Canada, New Zealand, wherever you are. If you love good story, just as you said, you don't look at black or white. You just like, if it's a good story, if the synopsis is good, if it's about the human experience on some level, then I'm in. And so that's another thing that I had to learn for myself, because growing up in America, you get an Americanized view of the world, which is a very limited view. And it's interesting because it wasn't until I was in grad school that I learned the concept of reading the world. In other words, don't just read books that have an American perspective. Read books from other authors around the globe. And that just opened up my world, because then I said, oh my God, I suck at writing. After reading some of the, when I read The Kite Runner, by the, about, Afghanistan, I was like, oh my God, this is, this is like a wonderful book, but I'm just like, whoa, and so, or when I read Half of a Yellow Sun by Nigerian writer Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi, I was like, whoa, I suck as a writer, but, when I started reading the world, and there was another book called A Man Called Uva that was by a writer from the Netherlands that was also really good. But it just said, the invisible thread that binds us, there's an invisible thread that binds us all. And that, and through our experience of story and telling story, whether we read it or narrate it. And I think that's something, important to also realize for people, to read the world, to listen to books, to, to do that sort of thing. Yeah.
That is so true. And I'm glad you mentioned that too. I haven't read globally, but what you naming some of them and reach out to those and read globally. I like that. I hadn't done that yet. But,
oh my God.
But
yeah.
I am looking for you to give me some,
Some recommendation?
leisures. Yeah, some recommendation, because it's like, if you read the book, and I trust that the way you're reading, I know, and that's one of the things we thrive on, is bringing great pages to, we call turning the pages, or bringing pages your way. That's our little slogan, because just some people may or may not like, but so far we've been hitting home runs with the books that we've brought to our readers. And so it's like you say, it's not just reading a book, it's reading a great story. And so I used to just read like one particular author and all of their books every time it came out. And then when I met Queenie, I'm in her reading group, I'm in 2 reading groups, and she's a wonderful person to meet as well. Is that I learned to open up and read other books, not just that author. And so I learned so much more, because like a record, Earl, we tend to play that one record, but there are so many authors out there, so many aspiring and so many authors out there that have books, and they just need a platform, and they will go at it. And then what I learned was that some authors, I've been doing this for almost 13 years, and I've learned that some authors, they are very shy. And I'm like, you have a book and you're very shy. They don't want to be seen on camera.
Mm-hmm.
They don't mind having a small group discussion, but seen on camera is very frightening. And I'm like, you can't be afraid, because you're giving your book to the world, and you can't be afraid. But one of those things too that we talked about, Earl, is like the book, you just can't, like you said earlier, you just can't say, here's my book, read.
Mm-hmm. No, you can't.
Readers and authors networking together brings smiles, then probably maybe a purchase. And in our group, what we do is, some people may buy the book, and they may just want to hear the book, because the book cover is not telling them enough. And we found out too, don't just, the old saying, judge a book by its cover, because sometimes some of the readers, they get a book based off of book cover. Mm-hmm. And we've never done that. Some of our group, that's in the past, that people that I've known. But based off a book cover, I can't get based off a book cover. I really have to get based off a synopsis, because if you could tell me about your story in your synopsis, that pulls me in. So sometimes people cannot, and I don't know, you're an author yourself, I don't know who helped with the synopsis, but I think that is a great thing that they start doing it. And then another thing too, when you talked about the books, you can kind of do them yourself. 10 years ago, when the books were really good, 11 now, when they had the big bookstores and books were very popular, and that kind of fell away. What is that, Waldenton? How do you say that book? That huge big store?
Borders Books, Walden Books, Borders Express.
Yes. And that kind of tore everything down with us doing our business as authors. So I didn't know people did write their own books, but being a reader, we can read those books and we know that they have bazillions of errors. We're not editors. And I didn't start hearing about editors, not that they weren't there, right, but I didn't start hearing about editors until later on in the 5 and 6 years moving forward, after 10 years of just doing something. And they just want their book out there and do it themselves and have so many errors and want you to buy them.
Yeah, so part of that in the industry is when everybody has their dream. They want to put out a book, God bless them, put out a book. However, in anything that you do, you have to understand the process and the steps. One, you cannot edit your own work. You can't proofread your own work. And you need various types of editors. There's a difference between a developmental editor and a line editor. Okay. And so you need to have them both, in your work. So it's a process. Writing the book, getting the draft down is like, that's just a draft. Now you got to go through the process of rewriting and getting it edited and getting it cleaned up. so that it can be as error-free as possible. And there are people who are trained specifically to do that with your work. And ultimately, as the author, it is your name, it is your brand that you're putting out there. And if you give someone a product that offers nothing but distractions due to errors, well, then your product just, you've just became mud, in that person's eye. Because remember, you're taking up mental space in someone's head. And if someone's physically reading something, and even as a narrator, we as narrators have, taken on projects and we've started reading, and then we're like, oh Lord, this book needs editing. Because as we are trying to perform it, we don't want to have to read something and try to bring a performance to it and say, this is a badly constructed sentence. Because, we have to do breath work, we have to do all this other stuff to bring the story to life. And if it's like a one long run-on sentence, or something that isn't, doesn't make sense, we're sitting there scratching our head like, well, what were they trying to say? Or what was the intent here? So there is a process that creatives have to go through, and it's a slog. I mean, this is a business. This isn't a get rich overnight business. This is a labor of love. This is something that you enjoy doing, and you get paid monetarily, but you also get paid in other ways. And so, this is a business that's not for the faint of heart, because, you are being judged, and, people are, expecting a certain level of excellence from you in this space. You don't want to come out just because you have the ability to go do something and say, great, I wrote a book, and and then someone reads it, and they can't get paid past the first 3 pages without going, Lord have mercy. And it's I mean, as a new author, I was there when I first started. Oh my God, nearly 30 years ago. I thought, because I knew how to write, I could, I knew the King's English. And I wrote something, and later on, when I went back, look at it, I said, oh my God, what was I thinking? But it's a learning, it's a process that I had to learn, and that's important for creatives to know. And the same goes with audiobook narration. As you said, you don't want to listen to somebody who just drones on and reads the story like this, or or a computer. You want that person to have passion. You want to when that voice gets in between your ears, you want to feel like you're listening into something that's like, oh my God, this is so good. I can't wait to find out what happens next. Or, you get emotionally entangled in the story.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, speaking of that, and then we'll try to wrap it up. I just want to say this, ask you this, because I'm excited for you, because earlier yesterday, I sent you a code for a book by an author you never heard of, and it's I mean, this guy is a really good author. I like him. He's not only writing historical fiction, but he's writing African American historical fiction and science fiction.
Yes.
So it is like, it's like a wonderful story that is just like, but anyway, so you started listening to it yesterday, and you were saying earlier today, you said you were emotionally entangled in it. So talk about it.
Yes, I was. Because just hearing the word alone, I was like, okay, let me see. And then as you start reading it, and I start getting into the story, I realized that he was going from one era or century to another century. And when he got to going in between both of them, and then I had some painful moments. And they were painful moments that, I was born in the 60s, and that I can relate to those painful things that were going on. Along with having the, just reading, there were times when you had us up and you could read, and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? Oh, I had to pause. I was like, no, it wasn't because of him. Was it that building got burned up? Oh. And then I'm dramatic anyway. I don't know if I told you, Earl, but my mom, she's deaf. She was born deaf. So I'm very dramatic in signing to my mom if you sign real slow, she thinks something is wrong. Who's dead? And
Uh-huh.
if you sign up beat according to what's going on, and that's pretty much what you remind me in reading that story. And so just going from those, the thing with racism and the thing with, it's like, well, 1800s meet 2018. It's so, and different gadgets that we have, cell phones and versus what they had, technology versus what you had in that time. So it's a very, very good story. Very, I thought first, is this sci-fi? Is this historian? Is it a combination of that type wove together? It's
Yeah.
good. It's really good. It's going to take you through a lot of emotion.
Yeah, and so that's what I liked about the writer, the journey that he took me on, just as a reader reading it, because also, obviously, audiobook narrators are also voracious readers. We have to read the work so that we know how to perform the work.
Mhm.
And so there were times in there where it took me back to, my ancestry and my grandparents and aunts, because there was a part in there where he said there was bacon that came on a slab, and he had to slab. I was like, oh my God, I remember the bacon when it used to come like that, or the scent of freshly baked biscuits. And I was like,
Mm.
oh my God, I could just, the texture of it, just, like he's waking up to the smell of, oh, somebody's got some biscuits cooking, man. And, he was like, our biscuit, and when he was talking about when he saw the bacon versus the bacon of 1918 versus the bacon, he says, well, we just get the little thin strips of turkey bacon. But, when he travels back to 1918, they have to slice the
Oh,
bacon.
yes.
And I'm like, yeah, I remember that bacon where it still had the rind on it. The bacon still
Loved
had,
it.
yeah, the bacon still had the rind on it. And I was like, yeah, because I was like, yeah, the new bacon doesn't do all of that for you anymore.
Mm-mm.
It's just, but anyway. Um, so yeah, the other thing you were talking about with the speeding and slowing down, that's another thing called pacing in a book.
Yes.
Yeah, as a narrator, you have to know how to pace the story because you're leading the reader or you're leading the listener to a particular area. And then you also have to know when to take your pauses so that the mind, as it's listening, catches up.
Yes. Yes.
Catches up. So pause and let the mind come go, bam, oh shit, we're here. What next?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes. So Ellen, with that, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just wanted to hop on here and do this conversation with us, between us real quick, and post it in the group. And also, just so that the folks who are watching this know that Ellen is going to be posting more content from ESP chats. So she's going to be posting author interviews, book chats, and those sorts of things. So please, take time to pay attention, watch the work she's doing, connect with her. If you're a writer that wants to be on her platform to help you to connect with an audience, and also for the audiobook narrators or fiction podcasters in the group, the last thing I want to say about this is that people like Ellen are why we do our work, because they are the end buyer or end listener. And also keep in mind that as a narrator or a podcaster or even an author, we're like any other creative, whether you're a musician or whether you're an actor. We are only as good as our following. We are only as good as those who buy our product, who buy our creativity. It's like, for example, Al Pacino is one of my favorite actors. Anytime an Al Pacino movie comes out, I'm going to see Al Pacino because I like following Al Pacino. And the same thing goes with power readers and people who read it. When they find a writer or they find even a narrator who they like the sound of their voice when they tell story, they will follow that narrator and that storyteller because they like the way they do it. Like Morgan Freeman has a great voice. It's like, so it's like Morgan Freeman's narrating something. I want to listen to Morgan Freeman narrated. That's a skill set. So we have to, as creative collaborators, um, we have to support each other, to that end. And so, Ellen, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to more chats with you and more in watching more of your interviews.
Thank you so much, Earl. Thank you so much for having me here, and again, for valuing what we do, because here at ESP Presents, we do want to bring great page turners your way, and we do want the authors to know that we value their work, and we take a lot of time to really read and really know those characters and bring them back to you. We're not doing any staging or anything. It may be dramatic because that's how we feel or felt when we read that book. And thank you so much for this opportunity and for allowing me to post what we do. I really appreciate you.
I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much, Ellen.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.